Alrighty, so let's do a quick news of the week video before we have two more games in the CONCACAF Champions League involving MLS team, as in about an hour or so it will be Toronto taking on Club Leon, and then in the nightcap it's going to be the Union taking on Saprissa. And also, I do apologize for what happened last night where the review was uploaded a little bit later than I anticipated, because literally after the Atlanta versus Alajuelense game finished, and right after when I finished recording that review, the internet decided to not work anymore, and it took almost 2 hours before it actually worked again. And basically by the time the review was uploaded, it was already around 10 o'clock my time and already 1 a.m. in the East Coast. So I do apologize for that. Hopefully we will not have the same issue tonight when I do the review once again, looking at the first two games of tonight's CONCACAF Champions League action. But as I said, I'm going to quickly do a news of the week video, and when I say quickly, it really isn't, because we have a lot of news that we're going to talk about that has happened in the past couple of days. But first important news that happened from this week is that MLS has officially announced that they will implement the concussion substitute initiative that is part of FIFA, where they're having this kind of new rule where they're going to introduce concussion substitution. And this is kind of the thing that's been talked about for the past couple of years, and I'm happy the fact that MLS finally decided that this year is going to be the year where they introduce this rule. And that what basically this is that if a player does get a concussion, he could be substituted off, whether temporarily or permanently, and then the team can bring on a new subs to replace the player that of course have a concussion, and that will not count toward the free windows that MLS team have in terms of making 5 substitute. Oh, also this year the league also decided to not change the substitution rule and basically stay with the one that they did last year, where you can once again make 5 substitution in free windows. And I think that's a good idea, knowing the fact that we're still in a COVID pandemic period, and that this also kind of gives a good chance with this 5 substitution rule, where we're going to see some players that usually they might not get a lot of game time action if the 5 substitution rule of course was not introduced. Now, in addition, in terms of talking about how teams can now not have to use one of their substitution window, or not use one of their substitute one of the players that got a concussion, the other team can also get an additional substitution if the opposition basically had to use an unused substitution because of a player getting concussion. And I love that is also a rule that they of course added in part of this concussion substitute initiative, because this is a way where teams cannot just game the system, and you just cannot just basically keep substituting player off and pretend that they have a concussion, and then the other team basically will kind of in a disadvantage with the way that they're going to use one less sub compared to what the other team does. So I think MLS kind of thought that plan out, and they said that in order for teams to not game the system in terms of, we also will award the other team additional substitution if there is a concussion substitution that a team basically used. Now, moving on, in terms of next news is an update in terms of the Blaise Matuidi situation with Inter Miami. So, as I mentioned before, there is still an ongoing investigation of the Blaise Matuidi signing that Inter Miami did back in September, and that, we talk about how there could have been a bit of a violation and kind of an illegal TAM signing that Inter Miami did by making Blaise Matuidi a TAM player, even though technically when you look at his contract and his salary, it doesn't classify as a TAM player. Well, we have heard now news that he is now going to be classified as a DP player, which means that now Inter Miami has 4 designated players in their squad, and that they're going to have to figure out in a week time that they need to reduce that to just free DP in their roster. Now, they are arguing by saying that, well, can we just made one of our player, that is Matheus Pellegrini, not a DP, because he kind of go under the specific rule where, if you are a player that is under 22 and they basically are labeled as a DP. There's kind of a special rule where it doesn't really kind of count toward one of the free DP that each of these team of course are able to receive. But apparently, I think the reason why MLS are basically saying, yeah, you can't use that rule to basically said that Pellegrini is not going to be a DP anymore because of the salary that he currently earned, and that it seems like his salary is a little bit above the one that the league decided to introduce, that special rule where if you are a player that arrive in this league and you're under 22 and you're basically on a young DP contract, it doesn't really will count toward one of the free DP team of course have for their rosters. So it'll be very interesting to see what Inter Miami is going to do. I mean, I'm not quite sure if they're going to have to maybe sell one of their player or find a way to be able to buy down one of these free DP. Like, I'm assuming most likely Pellegrini is going to potentially get bought down in his DP, because he's probably going to be the most likely one out of the free DP that Inter Miami currently has, or now one of the 4 DP that Inter Miami has to potentially be bought down, and that they can now will have only free DP heading into this upcoming season. Now, moving on, in terms of the next news, and now talking about some signings, well, RSL has made it official that they have signed Bobby Wood, although they will not get him when the season begins, as they actually signed him on a pre-contract, and that technically Bobby Wood is still with Hamburg, and that this pre-contract basically says that he will only join RSL until Hamburg season is going to be over in the latter part of May. So most likely, once that his season with Hamburg is over, he's going to join the club somewhere around June. And yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how Bobby Wood is going to do. I mean, we've been talking about for the past couple of years where there could be a case that Bobby Wood could be coming to MLS after how things have really kind of took a turn for the worse. I mean, remember when Bobby Wood a couple of years ago was considered a hot prospect in the U.S. men's national team, and he might even be the successor of Clint Dempsey in that number 9 position for the national team? Yeah, things just did not went out whatsoever, and it would be very interesting to see whether or not, now that he is coming back to MLS, whether or not he is going to be a guy that is going to be like that striker a couple of years ago. Because as I said, when he was with the national team a couple of years ago, he was definitely a guy that has a lot of confidence and also score a lot of goals, not just for the national team but also in the club level. And RSL is hoping that of course is the player that they're getting by the time they're going to have him in June. Now, speaking of strikers, Minnesota has officially signed a number 9, and as much as you would think that I'm surprised the fact that for once the Loons actually solved their biggest issue that they've been trying to fix throughout this entire offseason, which is actually find a number 9. I kind of knew that this signing was going to happen, and that of course is them officially signing Ramon Behrami on loan for Boca Junior. And we heard the rumors that he potentially is coming to Minnesota, and as the week goes on, where it seems like this deal is getting ever so close to being signed, it was really a matter of time before the Loons officially announced that he of course is going to be joining the team, and indeed that of course is the case. And what's interesting about this signing is that apparently the Loons only have to basically pay him on a TAMP contract, and that there's also an option to buy in terms of this loan. So in case if Abela does do well with Minnesota, he could potentially be a guy that can be purchased from Boca Junior. But also the other interesting thing is that I thought when I heard this signing, even if this is just a loan that the Loons get him from Boca Junior, I thought it was probably going to be a DP contract. So the fact that we were able to just keep him down to a TAM contract is definitely an extra bonus. But I have a feeling if we do decide to buy him from Boca Junior, most likely he is going to be under a DP contract, and especially if he does well with this team and finally figure out the big question that we had throughout the entire last season, which is actually find a true number 9 that can score the goals for this team. Most likely he's going to earn a DP contract when he's bought outright. Now, NYCFC has officially signed midfielder Fredy Morales from Fortuna Düsseldorf. This is another one of those signings that we kind of knew it was going to happen. It was just a matter of time before a club made it official, and that, of course, is going to be the case. And we'll see whether or not if Morales is going to get some game time with this team. Obviously, you know, when I look at this NYCFC team, they look pretty good in terms of depth-wise in the midfield and the defense. But again, there is still a lot of question in terms of the attack of this team, and they're just pretty much paper thin when you look at the attacking depth of this team. And as I'm going to mention a little bit later, they try to even think about selling one of their strikers from this past week, even though their biggest issue right now is the attack, and they almost try to make it even worse when they decided to try to maybe sell one of their striker to a South American team. Now, the Portland Timbers have signed defender Ish Jume and midfielder Jorge Gonzalez, and actually will send Gonzalez on loan to Louisville. Now, we did see some action from Ish Jume yesterday in that CONCACAF Champions League. I think he came on as a sub for the Timbers, and you know, I didn't really read how well he played for this team, but I'm guessing this is probably just a depth signing for the Timbers, and knowing the fact that he of course are coming to the Timbers from a USL side, and usually when you see USL Championship player come to an MLS side, most of them are usually for depth reason, and that, you know, this is just another example of the Timbers trying to boost their depth and trying to kind of booster that so that in case if they do have a situation for this upcoming season where they might have some injury in their defensive department, they can potentially have plenty of depth and calling up guys from the depth chart to kind of replace some of their starters that might be getting injured or currently on the COVID protocol. Now, the Philadelphia Union have signed goalkeeper Greg Richardson, and yes, I actually finally know how to pronounce his name. I mean, you know what? He did start a couple of games with Minnesota last season, and as I mentioned before, where anytime when I don't know how to pronounce a player's name, as long as if they do get some game time and I hear the broadcaster, or in this case of how Cal Williams basically pronounced his name a couple of time when he was the starting goalkeeper for the Loons, I started to understand how to actually pronounce his name, and that it was kind of me just kind of just making a kind of a little bit of a sarcastic kind of way where I only call him Greg, even though I know how to pronounce his last name. But either way, in terms of this signing wise, you know, this is kind of an interesting one because the Union are already free deep in terms of the goalkeeping position, and if Greg Richardson is thinking about going to the Union and maybe get starting minutes, yeah, that probably is not the place to go with, because we know Andre Blake is basically the regular starter for this team, and even if Blake does went down for the Union, you still got I think Joe Bendick as the backup goalkeeper for this Union team, and then you of course started to go even deeper in the depth chart, and I think Richardson, once he's now with the Union, he's probably going to be end up as even the third or fourth choice goalkeeper. And usually when I see goalkeeper, you know, and especially with Greg Richardson, he was a guy that was kind of like a second and third choice goalkeeper for Minnesota. I was thinking maybe they might move to another club to get some playing minutes, but here, you know, he decides to go to a club that already have a established goalkeeper in their team and already have a lot of depth in terms of the goalkeeping position. So this is kind of strange, the fact that he is going to be going there to maybe get some playing time, even though he's probably going to be a fourth choice goalkeeper. Now, the Union have also re-signed veteran defender Arlene Collins to the squad, and you know, there's no doubt that Collins, I think he's not going to get those starting minutes that he had with the Union a couple of years ago, but this is definitely a good depth signing for the Union and adding more depth in terms of their defensive department. Also, speaking of goalkeeper, Montreal also acquired a goalkeeper, and they acquired Sebastian Brissett from Bologna. This is probably not a big surprise of a signing, knowing the fact that it seemed like Montreal and Bologna, with that partnership, they seem to like sending player in and out of their roster, and it seemed like this is a case where it looks like after Montreal kind of sent a couple of players to Bologna. Bologna basically they decided to kind of do an in exchange and basically gave them this goalkeeper to their team. Now, that being said, when I look at this guy, you know, I don't really know whether or not if he was a starting goalkeeper for Bologna or if he is a second choice. But if he is going to be coming to Montreal, it's going to be interesting to see whether or not if he's going to get some game time. I still think Clement Diop is probably the starting goalkeeper for this team, followed by James Patemnes. But then after that, maybe that's where Sebastian Brissett is, and that maybe he's just going to end up as a third choice goalkeeper for Montreal. And you know, for Brissett, I'm going to say the same thing about Greg Regisson. If he was a second choice goalkeeper for Bologna, and you know, if you're kind of in that position and you want to go to another team, you usually want to go to another team that you might get some starting minutes. And it's always kind of weird when goalkeepers first are already deep in the depth chart of their original team, and then when they decide to go to another team that also have some depth in terms of their the goalkeeping position, or they're just going to end up being once again a third choice goalkeeper. It just kind of feels very strange that is the move that they decide to make. But you know, we'll see whether or not eventually if he is going to get some minutes with this team. I mean, the only way I can really see him get minutes is that in case if those two goalkeepers that I mentioned for Montreal, Patemnes and Diop, could potentially get injured this season, and maybe he's just kind of come in as an emergency goalkeeper. Now, moving on into the last news on this board, because I actually have to switch the board one more time, since again there's been a lot of news to talk about in these past couple of days, and really in this past week too. FC Dallas have sold Thiago Santos to Grêmio for a report $1 million, and I don't know why I say $1 billion there. I bet when Dallas fans saw this, or when any MLS fans saw this, and they think, wow, how in the world did Dallas was able to get Thiago Santos for $1 billion? How will they even get him on the most expensive transfer we have ever seen in the history of this game? But no, it's actually only $1 million, and I accidentally kind of misplaced there in terms of the transfer. But either way, in terms of this sale, I mean, it's kind of a bit surprised that they decided to get rid of Thiago Santos, because I thought last year he was very serviceable in this back line for Dallas. And you know, I know eventually he kind of slowed down a little bit, and this is mainly due to the fact that he is into his 30s, and when you have defenders that is into their 30s, and especially with how last season was, where it was a very congested season, it was not a big surprise the fact that he kind of started to slow down a little bit, because the wear and tear really kind of got to him. But even then, I'm kind of a little bit surprised they decided to sell him. And you know, $1 million for a defender that is in his 30s might not be a bad kind of transfer, but again, you know, he was very serviceable with this team, and it will be very interesting to see how Dallas is potentially going to replace him. I'm assuming Cirillo is going to be the guy that is going to replace him, and Edwin Cirillo is a guy that, you know, came out of the Dallas Academy, and a guy that looked to try to be another one of those players that came out of the academy and be a regular starter for this Dallas team. And when I see him play for the senior team for the past year or so, he is okay as a defender, but not something that I would say is similar quality to what Thiago Santos was with this team last season. But that being said, I am now going to switch boards and actually look at some of the transfer rumors that happened in this past week. So moving on, in terms of some of these transfer rumors, so Orlando City said that they will not sell Daryl Dike for anything less than $20 million, and this is not a big surprise that Orlando City decided to demand a really big transfer fee, and maybe right around a record amount of transfer fee an MLS team could potentially get if they decide to sell one of their best players, because Daryl Dike, unlike the two other MLS players that decide to go on loan in Championship, and you probably know who they are, he has been absolutely tearing up in the Championship. Like, he is basically in probably even better form that he was in Orlando City in terms of the form that he's in right now with Barnsley. And if he can continue to score goals like that, not only the fact that there is definitely a case that he could be a future U.S. men's national team player, but he's also a guy that no doubt is going to continue to raise that transfer fee. And I won't even be surprised that $20 million might seems even kind of a little bit too low in terms of the transfer fee for Daryl Dike, and that it could potentially be rising up to $30 and $40 million if he can continue to banging the goals that he has been doing with Barnsley in the Championship. Now, NYCFC have decided to reject Palmeiras' bid for striker Tati Castellanos, and this no doubt was a smart move for NYCFC. And again, when you look at this team, their main issue coming into this season is definitely on the attack, and it's pretty much just paper thin. So to try to get rid of a guy when your attack has already is kind of paper thin and already a little bit short just does not make sense whatsoever. And as much as, even if this is kind of a big offer that Palmeiras give it to NYCFC, which I heard it wasn't really a big offer, I think NYCFC should hold on to Tati Castellanos, and that it would be just a move that does not make any sense if they decide to offload another attacker when they're already in shortage of attacking option for this upcoming season. Now, Inter Miami is in talk with Feyenoord goalkeeper Nick Marsman, and I think there's even reports saying that this deal potentially could happen in these upcoming days. And if he does come to Inter Miami, it will be a very interesting situation of whether or not if he could potentially be the starting goalkeeper for this team. I mean, right now, John McCarthy is the starting goalkeeper for Inter Miami, but I won't be surprised that if Inter Miami decide to bring Nick Marsman there could be like a goalkeeping competition. And especially Nick Marsman, from what I heard, he is a backup goalkeeper for Feyenoord, and that it seemed like he is another one of those goalkeepers that feels like he wants to get some more game time with the team, and that coming to Miami, he felt like maybe that would be the case that he can get more game time. But we shall see. If he does come to here, I think there's going to be a really interesting goalkeeping battle. And ever since Luis Robles have decided to hang up his boots, there's always been a very interesting situation with the goalkeeping position, and that I expect there could be a battle in terms of to see who potentially could be the starting goalkeeper for this team for this upcoming season. But now moving on, in terms of the next news, is that Jeff Larentowicz has officially announced his retirement, and there's no doubt that I am going to do a Jeff Larentowicz video and look back at the career of really one of the most underrated defender in MLS history. I mean, the career that he has with the Crew, the Union, and also with Atlanta United, where he was able to win an MLS Cup, just kind of signify such a legendary career that Jeff Larentowicz has. And again, I will definitely look back of his legendary career in a career video in the future. Probably not tomorrow, because tomorrow I of course have to do a review of one of Jeff Larentowicz's former team, the Columbus Crew, in their CCL match. But maybe in the future, or maybe I will push this back when the season actually begin, because next week I also have some busy kind of schedule of me starting to do predictions and preview for the first game of the season. Now, the Seattle Sounders have announced that they will have 7,000 fans back for their season opener against Minnesota United. And, I know Sounders fans aren't too happy the fact that there's only 7,000 fans, and I expect that the tickets for that game is definitely going to be very hard to get. Like, right now, since we have a lot of these teams that's going with limited capacity, a lot of these teams usually said the season ticket holder gets the first dibs in terms of getting these tickets. But even then, since the amount of tickets that teams are selling with a limited capacity is definitely not as much as the total number of season ticket holder is in the team, that does create like a little bit of a competition, and that I won't be surprised there could be a case where, I know the Sounders have a lot of season ticket in their team, and it's going to be very interesting to see how they are going to distribute, and that those tickets are going to be a really hot sale to of course able to get them. And also, if you're not a season ticket holder for the Sounders, yeah, you're pretty much out of luck. And like, I don't see how those tickets are going to end up in the general public, because again, there's just so many season ticket holder from the Sounders team, and just giving them 7,000 of them and trying to distribute them, it'll be very interesting to see how they're going to do that. Now, the San Jose Earthquakes have officially announced that their new stadium is now going to be named PayPal Park, and that they have partnered with PayPal as their stadium name sponsor for the next 10 years. And I believe the deal says that it's going to be $20 million that PayPal is able to give it to the Quakes in order to name their stadium for the next 10 years. And this is something that we knew that it was going to happen. I think the only thing that we don't know is what exactly is the amount that PayPal is going to give the Quakes in terms of putting their name in their stadium, and it seemed like it's going to be $20 million, which I'm hoping that could be used to invest in the squad and maybe sign a couple of DP player. But knowing the Quakes, it's probably not going to be used to do that. It's probably just going to be some good old bonus cash that John Fisher basically pocketed in his already deep pockets that he has. And yeah, it's going to be another situation where fans are going to be very frustrated of why the Quakes are not spending and continued to become cheap, even though there's already a big lump of cash, and especially with this happening, that there should be no excuse in terms of them spending the cash and trying to be a little bit more ambitious. Now, moving on into the last news of this news of the week, and this is going to be something that I probably should have talked about last week, and I was actually even thinking about making a video about this, but I decided not to do so, because if I do a single video about this topic, there's probably going to be some negative comments that is going to be in this video, and I'm going to try my best to react this as neutral as possible, because apparently last week there was a Twitter war between Jozy Altidore and Taylor Twellman, and that after Taylor Twellman said kind of create a very similar rant about the U.S. Olympic qualifier team that he did with the U.S. men's national team when they failed to qualify in that loss against Trinidad and Tobago in 2017. Yeah, Jozy Altidore did not take that very lightly, and he kind of felt like he was very offended by what Taylor Twellman decided to create that rant toward the U.S. Olympic qualifying squad that failed to qualify the Olympics again. And basically he had some really strong words that I'm not going to say, but I'm pretty sure you guys probably have already heard about. And then after that strong words that Jozy Altidore said to Taylor Twellman kind of tried to take the high road and kind of diffuse the situation by saying that, go ahead and donate to Jozy Altidore his foundation that he has going on, especially his Haitian foundation that he has. But then Jozy Altidore basically fired back by saying that, yeah, I don't need you to basically trying to donate in your foundation, and I see what you try to do here to try to diffuse the situation and trying to put this kind of whole notion on fuse, even though it's still a big issue. And Jozy Altidore, he's a guy that isn't really afraid of really speaking his minds, and we've seen before where Jozy Altidore have some very strong statement, whether it's political or something to attack another player, or in this case a TV person now. And whether or not if some of the words that he said to Taylor Twellman is actually just an example of an athlete's actually speaking his minds, or even go too far in terms of speaking his minds and sharing his thoughts, I'll let you decide on that, because if I say something about that, I basically would choose sides on this issue, and I try not to choose sides on this issue when it's kind of a very serious kind of issue that even gets it into kind of that political standpoint. on today. But for Taylor Twellman, I'm not really a big fan of him, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that do not like Taylor Twellman as one of the analysts for ESPN. But one thing that I will say that is the reason why Taylor Twellman, and this also is the same case for Alexi Lalas as a Fox Sports analyst, is that the reason why they're still there is because they are really the master of hot takes. I mean, nowadays when you look at a lot of these sports analysts and a lot of these sports shows, hot takes is really what the king of sports take is nowadays. Like, hot take is what really kind of get into like the discussion, and also have people kind of reacting to these news. Now, whether or not if that is kind of a negative way to ruin how these analysts should actually talk about these sports, maybe. But as long as if hot takes is kind of the way to kind of like dominate the sports landscape, and also a way to use it as ratings and kind of create some drama, this is just going to be the thing that we're going to continue to see. And again, these two guys, Taylor Twellman and Alexi Lalas, they are the master of hot takes. And as long as they continue those hot takes and people actually pay attention to, even though I know a lot of people do not want to see them on TV anymore, they're still going to be there just because of the rating sake. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of this news of the week video. Again, it was a relatively long video because I had to go through a ton of news that has happened in these past couple of days and in this last week. But let me know in the comments below if there's any news that I didn't mention in this last week that should be on the board or you want me to discuss. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.